part. So,
You
all
got
right,
it.
so we'll start again. Hey, welcome to Go for CEO community. Everybody, I'm excited to have a very special person here. We connected on social media. And, as I've been telling you, we want to bring you stories of entrepreneurs, CEOs, founders, really startups to 25 million in revenue. And you know the story there. At 25 million, usually people go to a stratosphere to the next level. We want to keep it in this space because we really want you to understand what's going on with these guys in business. What are they doing? He or she, what are they built? How are the struggles going? What's the ups and downs? And then we're going to chronicle this over the next few years, hopefully, to share with you what these business owners are doing and how their story develops throughout the years. So excited to have a very powerful gentleman. He's got his own podcast. He's sitting on a board of a digital company, and he created a great enterprise called the Pavement Group. So excited to have him today. His name is Brian Hess. Welcome, Brian. How are you?
Thank you, man. Thanks for that introduction, and appreciate you having me and doing great today, man.
Awesome. Well, hey, welcome to the Go for CEO community. One of the things I always like to kind of start off with is not necessarily the traditional stuff like, hey, well, tell me a little bit about you. I know off camera we were kind of talking about the family, and you have 4 kids. I have 3 kids, which is, I think I'm stopped because my wife, shut off the factory. So, but, as far as business, we like to really jump into it. Tell us a little bit about kind of the first entrepreneurial days. Did you have a job first? Did you start right into the entrepreneurial spirit? How did that start at the beginning?
Yeah, so I think, to start at the beginning, man, I would say that it goes all the way back to being a kid, right? Like, when you're a kid and you kind of have that entrepreneurial spirit, you just, from the time I was a little boy, man, I always would, look at different places. I would tell my parents that I owned these buildings we were driving past when I was like 7 or 8 years old. So I always kind of had that, in the back of my mind or in my blood. And so then, as I grew up, I was raised by, my dad was a steel worker. My mom was a stay-at-home mom. So it was like, you grow up, you get a job, make sure it has health insurance, put some money in retirement, buy a home, the same story that a lot of people have, And so as I got into my 20s, had some entrepreneurial ventures in my early 20s, and then, went and got a job and worked my way up through corporate America, and then kind of jumped into private business from corporate America into the construction industry. And then when I entered the construction industry, it was kind of where the fire started burning, man, where I was like, when you're in a small business, you can kind of see yourself in that role of creating that from scratch, right? And so that's kind of where I got the itch, after that, after I left the company that I was working for, couple false starts there, started with people that, it just didn't work out. The companies produced well, but it didn't work out from a partnership standpoint. And then 2.5 years ago, we formed the Pavement Group, started the Pavement Group, and man, the rest is history. It's been a great ride the last 2.5 years.
Love it. And I think our connection started a couple of years ago at 10X. Getting to kind of be like-minded and found each other through probably the groups that we had. So let me ask you something. I mean, let's go back a little bit. That partnership, what were maybe a couple of things that were learning lessons about a partnership, about structure, about, just kind of bringing on the right person?
Yeah, I think it comes down to, and I live by this, both in business and in personal, and it's lessons that you learn, because even after, man, sometimes you blow past the red lights, and you ignore some of the signs that tell you not to do something, and it costs you frustrations and difficulties and all kinds of stuff. And I think it's the alignment of values, right? To make sure that kind of where you come from and what your mission is and what you're really trying to accomplish aligns with those people that you're in business with. And it goes further than just those partnerships. It goes to, the employee level as you're starting to scale and you bring people into your business to kind of share that with them, as an employee, they're sharing the success of the company and they're part of creating that success. So it's really important for them to be having the same values as you do. So, if your goal as an owner is to make an impact and everybody else's is number one is by far to make income instead of impact, you're going to have some disconnection, right? Some misalignment in that stuff. So it's important for you to make sure that values align. It's probably the biggest lesson that I've learned as I've gotten older is those values matter, right? And it doesn't make one person right and the other person wrong. It just means that it's going to be more difficult with customers, with employees, or with business partnerships to not have those values aligned.
Yeah, I like that. What would you say is one value that you noticed pretty quickly, and maybe one value that took a little bit of time?
I would say, man, the one value that you have to have is what are you doing it for? Are you doing it to serve people? I mean, we all have, the need to take care of our families, to provide, the financial part is always there, but it's those other ones, like, to me, like, extreme work ethic is a value that has to align, right? Like, you have to be, because if one person is putting in an extraordinary amount of work and the other one is kind of part-time, it's not going to lead to great places. It's going to create some controversy, some conflict that is really unnecessary, right? Because doesn't mean, again, that one person's right, the other one's wrong. It just means you're going to get frustrated if you're going 1,000 miles an hour and somebody else is, always trying to pull it back the other direction. So I would say work ethic is one that comes to mind. Quickly, just, making sure that you're on the same page there. And then the other one is, just kind of that deep down mission. And that one is one that definitely takes some time to figure out. And it is a constantly evolving thing because, for example, we're both married with children. So, the woman that I met when she was, 30, and then the woman 10 years later, people evolve, right? And so you have to make sure that you have some alignment in the beginning, because as people change, that alignment's going to change a little bit too. And you got to have, enough in common, both from a business standpoint and a personal standpoint, to make sure that that continues to be successful, that bond is still there. And so, it's really important to dig into that stuff and to really understand those people that you're going on the journey with.
What great feedback there, Brian. I think, a lot of people could learn from that. One of the things, that comes to mind is I have a buddy of mine that started a podcast. He's already pretty big on one channel. He starts up another podcast, and he quickly found out one of the three guys was just not that work ethic. And he always says in his other channel that he's grown pretty big, hire slow, fire fast. Right? Yeah. Because you've got to notice these things, right? So interesting in a partnership. Now, how did it ultimately dissolve? Did you guys just, you're okay walking your own ways, or did you have to, I guess, get yourself out of there with a payment? Give us a little bit of insight on that, if you don't mind.
Yes, it was just kind of going your separate way. When it's not going to work, the first one I took it pretty square on the chin. I was really uneducated on how all this stuff was supposed to work, and just from a paperwork standpoint, and not having the right documents in place, things like that. So it was pretty easy to just walk away. The second one kind of morphed into, it was kind of the same type of business. So it was like, okay, you're gonna go your separate way, I'm gonna go my separate way, and then that kind of evolved into what we have today, right? So a similar business to this. So it's, sometimes it's easy, sometimes it's not. But I would tell anybody that's, in that situation where they're sticking around for, hoping that things will change, chances are that it probably won't. And as long as you've got your skills, your education, your motivation, those things that, are inherently inside of you, you always have the ability to start over, and you will be much happier and much more successful once you get in the right situation. 10X Grant Cardone says, find the right vehicle. And I believe that, the right vehicle for those people that have that entrepreneurial spirit is make sure you're surrounded by the right people, right? That is the biggest thing, because, you will go so much faster when you're in the right situation, and you will fight it every day, all day, if you're in the wrong one. And so when you figure out that, money is a source to make things happen faster, if you're in the right situation, if you're in the wrong situation, it won't do anything for you.
Yeah. No, a lot of lessons to learn there. So So one thing is, you start your own business after being kind of in the corporate world. You find an industry you really become passionate about. Your dad kind of had that, background. You're a kid growing up and you're starting to learn these attributes of entrepreneurship. You did go the corporate side. You did go the partnership side. Neither of them kind of hit the level that you wanted to. Take us into now, you take that next step 2 years ago, you start to transform yourself, and maybe it's the cocoon moment, right? The butterfly moment. Walk us through that. What did you do to start it? Any financing that you brought together? What are some details about the business that you really now knew, having learned these experiences before?
Yeah, so I was, I was kind of in a situation where people were, pulling me in to kind of do consulting type roles, where, because I'd left this industry altogether because I had, a couple challenging experiences, man. And I was like, man, I'm just gonna go do something else, and I'll, do this as a side hustle, and I'll build something myself someday, as opposed to continuing to go through the same thing. So I'd hooked up with a company up in Wisconsin, and I was helping them. And the owner decided after the 1 year that I was helping them out that he wanted to sell the business. And so I had that moment where it was either, take a leap or, continue to work for someone, so to say, and try to, figure it out as I go. And, not for everybody do I think this happens, but it was kind of an aha moment for me where, I was having a conversation with somebody that was, purchasing that business, and they kind of challenged me or talked down to me in a way. And I was like, man, it just gave me the motivation to say, like, it is time, man. This is the sign that I need to go do this. And, I had put together some, there was a group of guys that were going to come together to do this. And we did, we had some financial support, some financial backing. That's a great story. That deal that we put together was literally done on a handshake at a tailgate at an NFL football game. Literally, the pitch for our business was handled at an NFL football tailgate, and here we are, man. 2.5 years later, we're that group is still together. Same people. We haven't lost anybody in the business. We've added people, but no one's ever left, and it's been an incredible journey, man. Just from starting, and for those people who are listening who are thinking about starting, it will never not seem, scary. It will never, at the time, man, I had, kids, and my wife stays at home with the kids. And I remember having a conversation, with my dad, my parents in my house, and I was standing in my entryway, and my dad's like, you got kids, and, what are you going to do if this doesn't work? And I said, well, I guess we'll be having that conversation in a different house, maybe then. I don't know, but at the end of the day, I felt like if you don't put it all out there, man, you're gonna, at some point in your life, you're gonna live with some regret. And I never wanted to live like that. I always felt like there was something in me that, and it was never about the money, man. It's about being able to get out there and show people what you can do and really help people and make that vision that you have in your mind a reality. And the last 2.5 years, man, I've never had one day that was hard to get out of bed. Some days, just like anybody, you wake up, you don't feel like it every day, but every day I come here, man, excited. I feel like it's a gift. It's a blessing to get to do this, to live out, something that you have in your mind and in your heart, and create that into a reality, and to do that with people, with a group of people that, have a similar mission and similar values, and they're on the same track, and they're trying to help people and trying to do something good for the world. And that's who we are, and that's what we do, and it's just awesome, man. It's been a great journey.
Now, you bring up a point with your dad, and I wanted to kind of highlight that one. You said, hey, you're at the entryway of your house, and your dad just kind of looks at you and goes, well, what if this doesn't succeed? And, God bless our parents. God bless our family. God bless our friends. I had a friend tell me one time, hey, can't you just be happy that you were making 6 figures at a job and just be okay with that? And, I think I heard it somewhere, right? Naysayers and negative people call it, right? The naysayers, they're just loving you, right? but they don't know why you're doing what you're doing, right? So I love that part, man. It gave me goosebumps on your dad because it's always something that you have to battle through. And Go for CEO community, I hope you listen to that. I hope you record, go back and re-listen to it. There are going to be challenges. There are going to be people that will just literally tell you, hey, give you a seed of doubt when you planted the seed of, perception of what you want to do, right? So hopefully you go with the seed that you did. And if it fails, then like you said, hey, maybe Dad, we'll downscale our house. We'll do whatever it takes is kind of what I heard you say, right?
Yeah, whatever it takes, man. And I would say to those people out there that maybe have that person in your life, remember this: those people, your parents, those people that care about you and love you, that their number one priority is for you to be safe. It has nothing to do with, them not believing in you. It has nothing to do with, they just want you to be safe. And when they see risk, they're advising you away from that. And, in a lot of ways, it in your gut, right? It's that what I call the North compass that we all have built into us, and if you know it in your heart, man, you just, as Steve Harvey says, you got to jump, man. If you never jump, you will never know. You will never know what gifts you have inside of you that are missing.
I love it. I love it. So, all right. So, hey, we're past, your dad, you gave him the high five of encouragement to know that his son was going to make it, come hell or high water. So we're in the business. You've had experience. So so you incorporated, right? Do you have partners in this one you said then? Or is it just silent?
Yeah, I got a couple partners.
Okay.
Yeah, a couple partners. It's a partner of mine down in Florida, another one in New York, and then a partner up in Minnesota. So we've continued to kind of bring people on as we grow here too. So.
Okay, so it's almost like a legal firm where you bring on partners, or?
It's a similar strategy, right? Like down the road, we're trying to, kind of build it to a point where we've got people involved that are in it for the long haul and in it to build it to what we envision it to be. And so, one of the funny things that we always joke about is like, Jeff Bezos, I think he owns like 13% or 17% of Amazon or something. And I always say, like, I don't think he's too unhappy with his minority share. Like he's doing just fine. And that's another thing about growing companies and scaling companies is like when people feel part of that, man, they do a lot more. And so, to those people listening, it's not a zero sum game. There's not, if you look at a pizza, it's not a 16 cut pizza that you're baking, right? You can bake it as big as you want. And so those shares of the company, they grow exponentially with the value of the company. And so as you scale and you grow, it's not, you don't have to put a lid on it, hold on to everything yourself. You can bring in the right people, and certainly, sharing that wealth is an important piece of our journey here. So,
you bring up something that kind of just popped in my mind. About 3 weeks ago, I'm at another party with some friends. We were talking offline, you and I, about something, and we were talking about low float, which is, basically the ability to see companies that have low floating shares, right? The amounts, and you see what Amazon has or Apple and the outstanding shares and opportunities within this. I have one of my buddies that is into sub penny stocks, but more for the ability to buy these companies, right? And then be able to float them up. So it's interesting. Yeah, I mean, I don't want to get too into the weeds on that, but interesting to kind of see is one of the perspectives to keep it private and just grow it to a certain revenue amount and then exit, or do you have some strategies maybe to go public?
Yeah, no, we'd like to keep it private. I think, everybody that's involved has, their own ideas as to how they would want their piece of it. Some of us have kids that we'd like to, get involved in the business if that's the way that it goes. And, I would say it's too early to say anything's off the table, but like, we want to build it to make a difference. And, we want to build it to say, hey, this is what we were able to accomplish. We were innovative. We did, these things. We changed the industry and had an impact on an industry in this way or that. And, we've got, some pretty lofty 10-year goals as to what we're trying to accomplish. And, I think step by step, every 90 days, we're kind of reevaluating those goals and refocusing and picking out some new things that we're going to run at. And it's going well, man. It's super exciting to be, I love the concept of this show, man, because not a lot of people talk about that startup, to what it takes. And man, it's a unique journey, no matter what you've been through in business, no matter how, and I would say that's probably the case for anybody starting a business, even those people who have been massively successful, they come back and start another new business. And, you might know a lot more, but it is still starting from nothing. Right. So it's an awesome journey.
I love it. I love it. So tell me a little bit so let's get into the actual minutia of the business. What's some day-to-day activities that you do? What are your partners doing? How do you guys hold each other accountable?
So interesting question, man. Because we this year, if you're familiar with EOS, so Entrepreneurial Operating System, we just transitioned to that system this year. So that's for those of you, if you want to look it up, there's a book called Traction by a guy named Gino Wickman, and he created this program, EOS, and man, it has helped a great deal. So we kind of have, before this, I felt like we were all running to the same fires, right? We weren't sure who was going to take care of something. And, it was a small enough group where we communicated well and we were able to handle everything. And it was pretty efficient. But as you start to scale up and you start to add people and you start to have way more jobs and way more customers than one person should be handling, or that all of you should be running to at the same time, you got to figure out how to diversify that and really, get people assigned to the right places. And so this program basically puts in place what they call a visionary. So that's the person that's kind of setting the vision for the company and looking forward and kind of, innovating and coming up with those ideas that are going to take it to the next level. And then there's an integrator role, which that person's kind of responsible for the accountability of everybody. And then you have different buckets within the business. And so for us, it's finance, operations, and sales. And so we have, three different people in the company responsible for those three things. They produce all the reporting, they do all that kind of stuff. So that's kind of how it's divided up now. That's from an accountability standpoint, that's how it goes. We have regularly scheduled meetings every Monday and Friday. We have a leadership meeting every single Monday. So it really does a great job of creating rhythm to the business, and then does an excellent job of just making clear that accountability. So the first part of your question, what's the day in the life look like? To give everybody an idea, so we are a nationwide asphalt and concrete company. So we have customers, retailers, hotels, gas stations, banks, all kinds of different, what we would refer to as multi-unit property owners. So they have hundreds or thousands of properties. And our job is to simplify that whole process of, owning hundreds or thousands of properties and having that many parking lots to maintenance or replace or whatever it is a really challenging thing for them. So a day in the life is, receiving those types of work requests. They're coming in via email, via phone, conversations, whatever it is. We've got a pretty technologically advanced system now that we've got them coming into, so that they get assigned to the right places and tracked. And we're, working those from start to finish. So from receiving them to looking at them, going out and looking at the jobs, figuring out what needs to be done there, submitting the quotes, all that kind of stuff. That's the everyday, and then executing those jobs. So like Wednesday night, I'll be in Southern Virginia. We're ripping out a parking lot overnight, and then we'll pave it back the next day. And I'll be down there running that job. So day to day for me now, man, is like, it's figuring out, what is the next step? Like, how can we make this go faster? How can we improve our communication? How can we improve the customer experience? How can we improve our marketing, right? To deliver our message better into more places and for less money. And that is a challenge never ending in today's world. You learn it in algorithm is changing. The way that Facebook delivers your information is changing. The way that Facebook ads interact is changing. And so, staying out in front of that is a big deal. And the other part of my responsibility in this whole deal is kind of keeping company top of mind with people. Going back to Grant Cardone, talking about omnipresence, right? So trying to stay in front of people and delivering that message that connects with people, so that when they think about pavement, they think about asphalt or concrete, the Pavement group comes to their mind. And so it's a constant push forward to make that happen, and to make it easier, better, faster, and for less money.
I love it. I love it. So so you said you have partners in different areas of the country. Are you also then subcontracting these jobs, or you bring your own artillery and machinery and everything to do this Wednesday job? How are you actually executing that?
Yeah, so we do it both ways.
Brian, you're breaking up a little bit.
That do work for us directly, and then partners, subcontractors across the country. You got me now?
Okay, yeah, I got that last part.
Is it better now?
So you subcontract?
We do it both ways. Staff that work for us that we will send out on the road. But then we also have subcontractors that we work with. And it really just depends on the size and scope of the job as to how we figure that out. So we've got local markets like Boston, Pittsburgh, Minneapolis, where we've got presence and we're marketing and we're selling those local jobs. And then outside of those markets, and we've got a whole list of where we're going to have presence in next year, where we'll start to do those same kind of things. And then, if we get a couple hundred stores to line stripe or to crack seal or seal coat or something like that, we would send our own crews out on the road to complete that stuff. So it really just depends. We do what's best for the customer, and we do what's best for us from a cost and control standpoint. Sometimes it's easier to subcontract it out and manage that process on behalf of the customer, and sometimes it's better for us to jump in there and do it ourselves.
So do you work on a contract basis where basically you vetted out the opportunity, you give your bid, and then you're asking for the ability to basically control that, almost like a property management style, or am I wrong on that?
It's kind of similar. Yeah. So it's on a job by job basis most of the time. We have a few customers that we get most of or all of their work, right? And so that is, but it's still on typically a job by job. We contract each job individually basis. And then, yeah, we've again, because sometimes, we might plan to do it ourselves. And then, at the last minute, it makes more sense for us to send somebody else. But those are contractors. Again, social media has been a huge, huge play in that, where we can get to know contractors pretty well online, and then, eventually meeting them in person. But we've been able to expand our contractor network quickly and efficiently via meeting people on Instagram or Facebook or even LinkedIn. And that has served us well. But, it's about what I've learned in the last probably 5 years being in this business and then having it ourselves, is that people want the work to be done correctly, and they want it to be easy. So they want the process as more than they care about who is specifically out there doing the work. And here is the reality is those people that are out there on the property doing the work, they're always going to change, right? Like one day a guy's going to be working for this company, the next day he's going to work for another one. So that whole idea of who is out there, as long as the company behind it is secure, has the right strategy, has the right planning, the right execution, that's what the customer is worried about. Like, is the company that I'm doing this with able to control it? They have a clearly defined process, and are they going to solve the biggest problems that I have when they're working with me, right? As opposed to specifically who necessarily is doing the job. And for the customers, at this point, they realize that, we use the same contractors over and over and over again. And they just want to be able to have like a footprint of several states or a region, or in some cases, the whole country, where they come and deal with one team, one company, and one process, and they get that same experience every time.
Oh, you've identified something big, right? And I'm sure you can kind of dive even deeper into the quality controls, right? when I think about what you've developed, it's pretty cool. You're basically marketing the full service through you. You take care of everything, right? Seems like, and you vet out the subcontractors, you build out the relationships, what's one quality control after the job is done that you would say is something that someone can learn from that you've done that now holds your subcontractors accountable?
I would say, man, that by the time the job is done, the picture should already be painted. So we use technology to kind of paint that picture as the job's being completed, so that from a transparency standpoint, if you're my client, I say we don't just check every box, but we want you to see us checking every box. And we do that through the power of a portal that we use online. So like as a job's being completed, those photos, those videos, everything that's happening on that job is being uploaded through there, so that, if I'm doing your job in Southern Virginia and you are in Georgia or you're in Texas, right? You're a property manager or a facility manager or a property owner that's just not in the area. You can have peace of mind of what's happening on your property, and you can know, everything that's going down. And so I would say that's the biggest lesson is like, don't let them find out after the fact what's going on, right? They want to know every step. If you have the ability to give it to them in real time, give it to them in real time, because it just takes a lot of the question marks that people have about contractors. The more transparency and the more real-time information you're able to give to people, the less they have those question marks.
So what's one blunder that you've had in the last 2.5 years that you kind of like, but you maybe recovered very well?
Oh man, that list is long, brother. To pick one, if I was I'll tell you the concept of how I end up in blunders. Anytime I end up in a blunder, typically it is coming from the result of either going too fast, like you're not really thinking something all the way through. You're going a little bit too fast, and you're not asking yourself the tough questions. I'm trying to think, man. I've been in some really pretty serious predicaments, like on job sites where you don't want to be in a predicament on a job site, man, where you're sitting there thinking to yourself, like, how are we going to pull this off? Like, how are we going to get from this point where things are, just a little or a lot off track? How are we going to get back, to where we are? So I'll tell you this, I have a rule. We joke as a team. We say, man, when we're on a job site, we want to be like a duck, like calm on the top of the water, but paddling like hell underneath. Right.
That's an awesome metaphor, right? That's really cool.
Yeah.
So,
yeah, it works.
I love it. I love it. So help me understand. So, you had all this experience, you put this team together, right? You had these stories that got you to where you got to 2 years ago. And now you've got, the business going. So what's something that you could share that aligned the revenue starting to come in, right? To start to see the business flow through, and then where are you at right now, and where do you want to go? Maybe if you want to share with us the 10-year mark is revenue wise, just to kind of share and give someone a perspective of how you started 2.5 years ago to where you're going in 10 years.
Yeah, I think, I think number one, it's funny. I had a conversation today about goals with one of my good buddies, and he's superb in business. He has a giant company, super successful. And we were talking about just 2020 has been an interesting year for everybody, right? And so I shared with him that we're going to fall short of the massive goal that I set for us at the beginning of this year. But we're going to be pretty close to the profitability goal, right? Like we're going to get closer. So we were more profitable, but did a little bit less revenue than what we wanted to. And he made a comment to me that really stuck with me. He said, man, if you're hitting your goals, you're not setting big enough ones.
Wow.
And I said, man, that's, just gives you some perspective, coming from someone who has built a $50 million business. You sit there and look at yourself in the mirror, and sometimes you feel like, man, maybe I'm falling, you feel like you're falling a little bit short, but then you hear that, and it's the truth, man. And I knew in that moment, I'm like, I know what we did this year. I know it was special. I know it was great. Like, we had a great year. The trend is headed towards, you fall a little bit short. But at the same time, if you are setting baby goals, that are easy to check off, then what are you really doing, right? Are you really making progress? And so for us, we look at 10 years out, and we look at being $150 million company, and in that takes being in about 15 markets across the United States, and having local offices in all those places and performing work locally, and then growing our national presence, so that we can serve more clients and do more things in more places. And I believe with everything I got, man, that is, that's where we're headed. That's what we all believe. And, brick by brick, man, we're going to put it together and continue to, make the adjustments along the way that it takes, continue to recruit the right talent, attract the right customers. And that's it, man. It is, another one of my favorite quotes is, we way overestimate what we can do in a day, but we way underestimate what we can do in a year, or in 5 years, or in 10 years. It's amazing when you get that discipline down, you do those things over and over and over again that work, what that will produce in the long run.
So what are some identified things that you feel have changed throughout the years of what your activities are today?
Less time spent on things that don't matter, would be the easiest way to put it. More discipline, more organization, more, being intentional about your day. I feel like there's a lot of people, and I'm guilty of it some days too, right? None of us are perfect. Sure. Where you come in, you walk out at the end of the day and you're like, man, what the heck did I really do today? And, at the end of the day, if you don't make a list. So I just saw somebody wrote something today. It said, a successful day is spent in your calendar, not in your inbox. And it's true, right? It's about playing offense, not playing defense. And too many people, I would say the difference between me and 5 years ago, 10 years ago is I'm trying to play offense as often as I can. I'm trying to control my day, not the day control me.
So that's a good little segue to my thought here. A lot of entrepreneurs and CEOs that I talk to that are sometimes self-employed, right? We all learn from hopefully probably Kiyosaki, cash flow quadrants, being an employee, trading hours for dollars, self-employed. I always love this, reasoning and mindset, right? Until you get to a business owner, you actually never really owned a business, and at least in my mind. Business owner means obviously you've scaled, you've started to broaden down systems and strategies and all these types of things. So what's, you just said kind of prioritizing, playing offense, understanding. Maybe a better question is, do you use not only systems to help you that, like, or say the EOS system, but personally, do you have an assistant or two? Do you have a virtual assistant? Have you used, or are you thinking about using that stuff?
Yeah, for sure, man. I think that, the number one piece of advice that I would give to people is, before you get an assistant, you got to figure out yourself. Because if you get somebody to help you, you're doing nothing but covering up the problem in a lot of ways. So there's a lot that you can handle yourself, because, you're communicating. That doesn't mean never. I would love to put that in place eventually, but I would say for the last year, maybe year and a half, I've really been focused on, trying to get the most orange juice out of my own orange, right? Like, how can I kind of master what I am able to do? And so, I get that a lot of times from people like, man, you got this going on, or this, multiple companies, like, how do you juggle it? And the truth is, man, you're capable of way more than what you think. It is all about, how do you do it? How do you go about it? So for me, I'll describe my ideal day. Is this how it always goes? Absolutely not. But I try to make this happen as often as I possibly can. And that is, in the morning, I read scripture. I read like a one pager that has scripture in it. And I read the Maxwell Daily Reader. If you haven't picked up that book, it's a great one. Just a one pager on leadership every single day. And I sit down and I write down my goals. I write down my to-do list. I write down what's going to happen that day, and I go on offense. And that is what it takes. And then from that day, you carry over the things that didn't get done. You make sure your critical tasks are getting handled, all that kind of stuff. And those are your best days, man, where you have it all together. You know, a virtual assistant, in my mind, you know, I feel like I'm kind of at that place where, you know, you could either hire an assistant or hire a virtual assistant, whatever people prefer. But I felt like there was a point in my life where I wouldn't even know what to tell that person to do because, right, I didn't have rhythm to my own life. I didn't have a routine. I didn't have, you know, I would never want someone trying to figure that out. Like now, I feel like if they walked into my office, they would have a pretty good idea of what I do every day and every week. So it would be easier for me to do that. So I would tell people, you know, there's nothing wrong with it. 100%. Eventually, you know, for you to scale your business, you need those types of things. You need someone that can, you know, be that person to kind of carry the ball down the field for you here and there on those things that need that. But at the same time, you have to put the time in to yourself because, you know, for you to be most efficient, it starts with you.
Well, and you know, I'll just, you know, give the community something to chew on, right? I connected with you, I think on a Saturday. I shared with you that I'm starting to do these interviews with CEOs and founders. You know, I lost a week, right? Because you had given me, hey, these are some dates that I'm available. And then when I came back to you, you're like, hey, look, just go to my Calendly and pick a time. And I thought, wow, that's a very proficient thing, right? That's very efficient. You put your Calendly together probably the next few weeks. You know where you're going to be. Somebody wants to get in your schedule, hop in, and then that's an efficiency. So, so I think that's a big deal. I had Calendly about a year ago. I've truthfully fallen off of it, but you know, you've given me an example of something that I could do better, right? And people could do better. So, like Brian said, guys and gals, you know, look at ways that you could get better yourself. Look at ways that can help you through technology to help you, right? And then, yeah, you know, look at those opportunities. So let me ask you something. Everybody that comes into the Pavement Group, are they all then independent contractors, or are they looking to be partners, every single one of them?
No, they start as employees, you know, and then down the road, you know, we're looking at all kinds of different ways to involve people, whether that be through an equity pool or whatever. You know, we haven't figured it all out yet either, but it's important to me and it's important to the other partners to make sure that, you know, people feel a part of it. And you know, long term, those people that are in it with us, you know, we feel like they should feel that connection. They should feel part of it. And we want them to feel, you know, like their own entrepreneurial type of situation inside of our company where, you know, we can, and I don't know how to do it yet, man. I say this all the time, but I set out to create something different. We set out to create something different. And that's what we're doing, right? It's like, you know, and you figure it out as you go. It's not always perfect, but, you know, to give people the ability to earn income above and beyond, you know, what they could somewhere else, and to do that through different creative ways that we can come up with to do it, whether that's through, you know, people selling or company profits or whatever. We're gonna create these positions to where people feel part of what we do, but they also feel like they have their own little deal inside of our company.
That's awesome. So look, you know, I want to be respectful of your time, Brian. So probably a few more minutes here, if you don't mind. So tell us a little bit about kind of the next steps with, you know, bringing out more areas of business, right? So other states that you're going into. What are some marketing things? I think you shared with me you're on the board of an actual digital marketing company, which is nice. You get the inside. So I don't know if you're using them personally for this business, but how does that look like, the scale of going in, you know, out to other states?
Yeah, so it's pretty awesome, man. So that's a great transition. You're pretty spot on there with the connection between marketing and going to new markets, right? And you know, I always say this, but like in the past, you know, in the old days, as they say, you would have to like go to that market and start working. And, for us, we can kind of, show up in that market digitally and start to kind of prime the pump, if you will. And then we can, make the investment and have people move in and all that kind of stuff. And so we've been doing those little tests, right, to see where to go, what are the best places, that kind of stuff, through digital, right? And Lead Revenue is the company that I'm talking about, and we do use them. So if you go to our website or you go to any of that stuff, you'll see that. And we've been mastering that strategy. And I'll tell you, man, I've been on social for a few years and pretty heavy on it. And when I started to get the education about the web and Google side of things, man, I felt like I was back in grade school again, learning all over, because it's so different and it's so massive. And it is absolutely the way that, businesses are going to win or lose in the future is you have to figure out that digital piece. And there's so many different ways to do that. And so I would tell people, even in their own markets, man, you can flip that script that I just described of like, putting something in place and then working it. You can literally reverse that and market first and see what's there. And that gives you kind of a little test of the water, how warm is it? And see, is there, because you might be misreading the situation. You might be looking at 4 different cities to go to. 2 of them might be head and shoulders over the others needing what you have. And, so if you do that test, you do that kind of marketing test up front, you're going to get real results. You're going to get, black and white numbers that don't lie. Right. So that is kind of our strategy as to how to do these market expansions. And, we're in the process now. We got some ideas, but I'm going to keep secret where we're going.
There. I love it. I love it. So, hey, so part of Go for CEO, really the C is customer experience, the E is employee engagement, and the O is operational excellence. You, Brian, are actually going to be my first guy I'm actually asking this. I've been trying to make these a little bit better. And I see some podcasters that kind of end with certain questions and political ones and whatever, all types of, but so I'm going to ask you these questions and we'll end with this. And, we're looking forward to, reconnecting with you in 6 months, seeing where the Pavement Group is, and hopefully a year, 3 years from now, and hopefully seeing you at that $150 million mark in the future. And then we're going to be fans of yours. So I hope that you'll join us in the future. But for right now, to end the podcast, C, customer experience. What's the value proposition that makes the Pavement Group the best at that piece of the puzzle? And then I'll ask you the other 2.
Yeah, it's 100%, man. It's the transparency and the process, and really putting the customer at the center of that process. We build around them. We don't try to tell them how we're going to do business with them. We ask them how they would like us to do business with them, and then we build that entire process around that transparent, highly communicative approach to solving their problems. That's what customer experience is. I can tell you, any customer that has a great experience probably had a problem solved, or probably didn't have an experience that was negative before in this particular time that they visited a store or did business with a company, whatever it is. So
the next one is employee engagement. What's the value prop that you feel that you guys bring to the table from the Pavement Group's perspective?
Man, your team is everything, man. And if you don't pour into them, and you're not, a great mentor and a place that they can feel at home and they feel part of, and they feel, respected and appreciated. And, the best advice I could give to any leader out there is, reconnect with your employees on a regular basis, and make it meaningful. Actually listen. And don't just talk business all the time. That's how you get true employee engagement, is beyond business.
Go deeper. Yeah, I love it. And last one, operational excellence. I know you've talked a few points, but what would you say is probably the number one thing that you value as a value proposition that you guys bring to the table on operational excellence?
Man, I'm going to answer the question in my own way. For our company, it is create the process and then trust the process.
Okay.
When you create the process, it's all, the process is always right. The companies that get operationally broken is because they probably skip past their own processes far too often. And so, you know, trusting the process, and that's hard to do, man, when you're moving fast, but pumping the brakes a little bit and being willing to trust your own process that you've put in place, it'll serve you if you could do it. It's a lot easier said than done when you're going 1,000 miles an hour, but it's important to do.
Well, I love it, man. So thank you so much, Brian. I appreciate your time today. You know, I'm sure you've got a busy rest of the day. You've got 4 beautiful children waiting for you, a great wife, and an incredible team, it sounds like, at the Pavement Group. So thank you so much. We look forward to reconnecting with you in a few months, finding out where the Pavement Group is going next, and seeing the journey beyond. So I appreciate your time, Brian.
Thank you, man. I appreciate you having me, brother. Thank you.
All right, my man. Take care. Have a good one.
You too.